Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Masters of Supply Chain Weekly News Digest. I'm your host, John Church, former Chief Supply Chain Officer at General Mills, and I'm joined today by my friend Sasha Koff, former SVP of Digital Supply Chain at Dell. Sasha, how are you today?
I'm good, John. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Spring is sprung in Minnesota, and hope springs eternal. Baseball's coming around the corner, and everybody's batting 1,000. So
There
it
you
is
go.
the world has yet to reveal itself, which is different from our topic today, which is the world keeps revealing itself and keeps changing what's going on. David and I had a chance to talk last week about about tariffs and how companies were anxious, but they didn't really know what to do because
Yeah.
things are changing, and maybe for the first time we're starting to see trading partners elicit responses, and that may change the dynamic not only in terms of what our strategies might be to mitigate, but also what the demand signal might look like, and how that can impact where your business goes. I know you're getting these questions from folks that you're talking about, and one of the things that people go to first, I guess, is what's your sourcing strategy, who are you looking at to supply, et cetera. But I'm hearing, I'm hearing folks start to discuss, man, do we need to think about where we make stuff? Do we need to think
Yeah.
about reshoring, nearshoring, undoing stuff? You were part of a digital supply chain that, and certainly on the hard side, you had to think about for a long time where you did stuff and why, and who you sourced from and why. But these aren't easy things to navigate through. What
No.
are what are you seeing, and what are you telling folks when they're asking your opinion?
Yeah. Wow. It's multifaceted. We'll start there, right? I mean, I think the dynamics that we're facing into right now, right? We've talked about mature supply chains for years, having kind of these business continuity scenario planning
Yep.
activities, right? And I think some have been better at it than others. But I don't think anybody anticipated I would say running 5 scenarios all at once, all within a single day, and then thinking about the prioritization of it. And I think that's what's happened over the last couple of weeks. I would say more so than the last couple of months, particularly for organizations that are multinational, but they may
Hmm.
be headquartered here in the United States, right?
Sure.
And or right abroad, but a big part of their revenue footprint might be here in the States. So here's where I've started from, right? Which is almost go back to the basics, right? So really fundamentally thinking about the product, the customer, what is the value proposition that they're attempting to generate within the market, and to use that as almost a guidepost in terms of helping them to think back into their organization around some of these really challenging questions, right? Around, okay, well, and I would say the other piece to this is also giving a real solid thought around kind of the market profile of those companies, right? Some industries are fortunate enough to have margins that allow them to think about this scenario in a very different way than other
Yep.
industries, as you
Agreed.
well know, being
Yep.
being with General Mills for so many years. So I think first it's, do I understand the customer where I'm playing? Do I have a fundamental understanding of what my margins look like? And then that then helps to kind of think about these questions for sure.
So it's kind of if I hear you right, as opposed to what's my problem today and mitigating it, start back with what's your value proposition and what would a supply chain look like? Sort of, and then how do you build that resilience in? How do you design
Yeah.
that resilience in? It is interesting in food, and we didn't add enough value in the manufacturing process. So much value comes from raw materials that as you looked at our structures, it was really important who we sourced from a material standpoint. But after that, food's pretty local. People don't
Yeah.
want to buy food made in another country. Different in the EU, certainly, but importing across for packaged foods didn't make lots of sense. There wasn't a great model for us. But obviously, a lot of industries there are, and we've seen more nearshoring and changing of the supply chain around electronics. We've seen some of that around some delayed stage differentiation on the apparel side. When I think about this, the thing that just sort of confounds me is where are we going to find the people? I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it would have been an absolute non-starter back during COVID, but and certainly we've seen the labor force slack up a little bit here. But does it mean we always have to have a lights out solution here, and we're going to have to automate this in order to make it right, in order just to make a business model go? I mean, how are you seeing that? And when you're talking to people, where's their head at around that? Because it's nice to think about making something in the United States, but I got to find people that want to actually do it.
Yeah, well, so I think there are three problems that organizations are facing as they start to think about the nearshoring, or I'll say onshoring model,
Yep,
right? So I think first is you're absolutely right, right? The experience around running plants and what does that look like, right? That intellectual capital is not here, right? In general, it is outside of the country. Yes, we may have had a development program that took leaders and kind of rotated them through different plants, what have you, but it's not residents here. And this, I think, is more of a U.S. based challenge than other potential
hmm,
locales. But the other phenomenon that we're seeing is the visas to be able to get people to even be able to locate here,
sure,
right? And so that's been some of the conversation as well, which is, okay, well, how do I also think about, well, if I want to borrow talent, if I don't have it here
right.
and I want to borrow it, okay, what does that process look like? Can I even get the talent to come here to even help me with what that looks like? So that's the first question. And I don't think it's going to be an easy answer, to be blunt, right? And so I think some of this then gets to kind of the time value of money
Right.
beyond that. So that's the first question. I think the second question that we're seeing is, look, you and I both know you don't just stand up a factory overnight. There are raw materials, there's information, there's systems that have to be designed and to put underground. And certainly even in local communities, right? There's only so fast you can move in terms of getting uh, permits and things of that nature to build. So even if I can get a hold of all of the potential physical material I need to
Yep.
build the physical location, I might still be looking at 6 months to a year. So I think some of this goes down just to the fundamentals of running some of the financial models around the time value to money, and sort of thinking about that. And then I think that gets to the third challenge that people I've been hearing about this past week, which is just the cost of capital, right? And if I've got cash, given what I'm facing into right now, do I use that cash?
Right.
Do I sit on it so that I can protect the assets that I've got? How do I start thinking about this trade-off decisions? I think it's almost like trifecta of different trade-off decisions that people are going through in terms of, well, how long am I thinking about what this model really looks like, from people,
Well,
infrastructure, and capital investment.
yeah, it is very complex, and you're right. The sort of traditional barriers to entry that used to be the case, right? You needed to be with this big reputable company to be able to get people. You needed to have a strong balance sheet in order to have the capital, and then that went away when interest rates were 0.5%, 1.5%. They're sort of returning,
Yeah,
and you're reacting to policy that could change at the next election or the next bad hair day. And
yeah,
so it is an interesting, to your point, we're literally putting iron in the ground sometimes. And
yeah,
so I like your idea of I got to figure out what I do for a living and where I add value. I don't think we can all run to one side of the boat,
no,
because who's to say the wave isn't going to come from that side the next week or next month. So
yeah.
do you mitigate the risk? Do you do the scenario planning and wait to pull the trigger? How do you think through that?
Yeah, so I mean, the advice that I've been sharing with folks that have been calling has been, look, you obviously have to factor in near term. You got to make sure you put the oxygen mask on right now.
Right?
But I think you want to be doing it with the standpoint and the thought process around, okay, but if this changes 180 degrees, do I still have a value proposition around it? So I would say it's like the 60-40 split of, go with what you need to be doing short term, but do it with an understanding of what that long term potential shift might look like, and then use that as almost like your litmus test of, am I making the right short-term decision as
Right.
well? And so I think that's a piece of the thinking that people are right now, like I'm trying to pull people back from, is you need to focus on the short term, but don't forget to understand what that long-term implication might look like in case this does, I'm a big sailor, right? If you want to jibe,
Right.
the other direction, okay, do I have wind to be able to shift the sail over to the other side of the boat? So,
And you better duck your head if you're jiving.
exactly, exactly. So that's the other piece that I think we need to make sure we are reacting effectively, but appropriately, given where the market may shift to.
Yeah, I think I hear you, and I think that's good counsel. I do think that the good news is all of the scenario planning, all of this sort of testing and pressure testing our decisions is going to lead to resilience. And we're
Yep,
going to have to lean into some of this stuff. And it might get, as it has in the past, it's tough to predict the future, but you can use short-term fires for short-term energy to catalyze some change and allow you over time to get to the right space. You don't want to wholesale invest in something that you don't know, but you might get a supplier started up in this country. You might get
yep,
3 lines put into place, but have it only represent 15-20% of your production
yeah,
because you don't know when it's going to change.
Yeah.
I know that's not satisfying for the CFO. That's not satisfying right now. It's not
No.
satisfying for the boards. I sit in board meetings and I'm hearing, well, tell me what's the, what's the worst case scenario around tariffs and what could this mean to us and can we price given the dynamic and the economics and where the consumers are at right now or the businesses we support. And the answer is I don't know what the worst case. I can tell you what it is right now, but if you're importing stuff from Canada, it just got twice as bad this week,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I'm getting board notes.
yeah, but I think the other piece that I've reminded a couple and have counseled them to go back to is, look, some of them nearshored over the last,
Hmm.
3 to 5 years. And I said, when you ran those models, why don't you take the model back out and take a look at, what the price was versus where the price is, factor in the tariffs. And I bet you, even in the scenario of this morning, you're still saving a couple dollars, right? It may not
Yeah,
be as great as it was, but I think we also have to remind ourselves that we are, even it may not be the best scenario, we are in a better place than where we
yeah.
potentially were to begin with, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. Yes, it may not be the margins that we all wanted, but it's still better than potentially where we were.
I
Um,
think that's a great point.
you know and I think the other piece is, right, the old adage, don't let a good crisis go to waste. This is a huge opportunity for companies to really go back to that point we were talking about earlier. What is really their secret sauce? And this is a great opportunity to think about, how do I maybe restructure what my business looks like and what I actually want to be doing versus how I want to outsource, right? As well, like
Right.
that. I think this is a great opportunity for folks to really seize on that and perhaps bring in organizations and thought constructs that under normal circumstances you would never consider. But now is a great time to kind of experiment, right? And almost go back
Yeah.
to the roots of being a startup versus these big, heavy multinationals also.
The other thing I'm seeing is companies are in really different places, understanding sort of the lot in life that their competitors have. So if the whole world is structured so this particular commodity, this particular value add comes from China, then everyone's experienced the same thing.
Correct.
You probably have the ability to price, and the flip side is if you're disadvantaged or advantaged on how you're sourcing, you play it differently. And it
Yeah.
isn't just, to your point, the margin game of what did I pay yesterday versus what am I going to pay tomorrow. It's over the arc of time. Are we advantaged? Are we resilient? Does our business model work? And do we understand and can we predict a little bit in war game what the competition's going to do to make
Yeah.
sure that, because that has to inform your scenario planning stuff as well, right?
Yeah. Very, very much so. Very much
That's
so.
terrific. Well, Sasha, thank you. We live in interesting times, and I'll be interested to see where it goes. Who knows what we'll be talking about next week? What I'd like to say for those of you tuning in, if this is interesting to you, and if you're interested in better understanding of the latest news events and how they're impacting global supply chains, businesses, technology applications, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Sasha, thanks a lot. I hope you have a great day, and we'll look forward to catching up next week.
Sounds good, John. Talk to you soon.